Now, I don't do a lot of movie reviews on this channel, but when it comes to Batman, well, it's time to get nuts. So come on, let's get nuts. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Bat fans? Mike back today to talk a little Batman, as we're going to be talking about the brand new 2022 release of The Batman by Matt Reeves. Now, this is a movie, guys, I feel like it's been a long time coming. It's went through a lot of variations. I think this did start off as a Ben Affleck solo project where he was going to be writer, director, producer. Then Jeff Johns and Chris Terrio came in to kind of help him tighten up the script, maybe comic book it up a little bit. I'm not really sure what the whole deal with that was, but it seems like over time it just kind of fell apart. It just kind of changed into something completely different, and that's what we ended up with this brand new adaptation of the Caped Crusader. Now, guys, this is going to be spoiler-free, so if you haven't seen the movie, you are still safe. If you are looking for some spoiler thoughts, stay tuned. Same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow. I'll be talking with Scott from the DC Squadcast, and we're going to kind of go over spoilers about what we really, really liked or did not care for, all that stuff, what we want to see in the sequels, where this ranks amongst our Batman films. It seems like since Justice League Mortal, that's the movie that George Miller of Mad Max fame was going to make in 2008. It was days before it was about to start production, and they ended up scrapping it at the last minute. The Warner Brothers, it always seemed like they kind of had like this apprehension about letting multiple people play the same character at the same time. And I know apparently Christian Bale and Chris Nolan also were very much against them doing a separate Batman while the Nolan trilogy was still going on. So I don't know how much that played into it or not. There's a lot of politics involved. Look, guys, but they get movies made. Half the time I'm surprised they ever get made because there's a lot of things that have to happen for a movie to get made, right? So, but it seems like after the success of Joker in 2019, the WB has kind of started to open up to be like, okay, look, we can have multiple people playing the same character. Our audience is not that low of intelligence. They can understand, hey, this is a different version of the same character. And that is kind of what we end up with here. Now, look, eventually Ben Affleck got kind of fickle. He didn't know if he was going to do it or not. I mean, he went on Kimmel, said he was going to do it, and then the next week it was announced he wasn't going to do it, and then it kind of turned into, oh, look, Matt Reeves just got hired as director, but Ben Affleck's still going to play Batman. So it was like, is he though? Surely enough, that did fall apart. It was announced that Robert Pattinson would be the new Batman, and this would be basically a complete sub-universe to the DCEU. So kind of like Joker in that it is self-contained. It is just its own thing, and I think that that was a brilliant idea as we're going to talk about. So this, written, directed, and produced by Matt Reeves, who hasn't made a movie I haven't liked yet. Look, guys, I love the Planet of the Apes movies that he did, and that's a franchise I've loved for a long time. So the fact he was able to please me on that shows me this franchise was in good hands. I love Let Me In. Hell, I even like Cloverfield. So I don't feel like anything I've watched of Matt Reeves yet, I haven't really just adored. So I was expecting to like this. But did I like this? Well, we're going to talk about it like we do in a usual format, guys. But we're going to begin with talking about what is this movie about now. In the second year into his Gotham project, Bruce Wayne is still learning the best way to solve the ever-growing criminal and corruption problems in the troubled city as the Batman. He ventures into Gotham City's underworld when a sadistic killer calling himself the Riddler leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues. As the evidence begins to lead closer to home and the scale of the perpetrator's plans become clear, he must forge new relationships, unmask the culprit, and bring to justice the abuse of power and corruption that has plagued the metropolis of Gotham City for far too long. I think so, guys, 2022, this is The Batman. Now, we're going to be like usual, guys. We're going to talk about what makes this movie good or bad. Now, the good, this is the most classic Detective Comics version of Batman we've ever seen on film. I've always wanted them to lean really heavily into the world's greatest detective version of Batman. We've never really gotten that on screen. You get it here. I won't lie, I wish it was just a little bit more, but it's still very, very good. And the way that they're doing this like it's a year two Batman, you can understand he's not at the top of his game yet. He's still learning how to do this. And it's never a point where you feel like, okay, well, he's always the smartest guy in the room, because obviously the Riddler can match him with wits very easily. You never feel like he's the best fighter in the room, because in the fight sequences, he takes quite a bit of damage, but he deals out way more damage. But again, it definitely feels like a rusty Batman, someone who hasn't really completely sunk into being like, comfortable with this role yet. And that's something I feel like really does touch on how the comic book character is. Very much is a thinker over a fighter at first. Obviously he's action when it has to be. Well, I feel like more modern interpretations have been like, well, Batman's just here to ninja kick some stuff, and that's cool. I'm here for that Batman as well. But as a fan of the comics, I really like this version of it. Something that I feel like this movie captures really well is how the street level criminals are terrified of him. They see the bat signal in the sky and they are on high alert. They are absolutely scared. Like there's this, guy's robbing a gas station. He's probably thinking, oh, well, the bat signal in the sky is probably not coming after me, but look at that shadow over there. Batman could be in that. I love that they do that. There's parts where the criminals are like, they're staring at like darkness and they're terrified because they think Batman could come walking out of there. It's really good. It almost makes Batman seem almost like a horror movie monster. And I think that's something that's really great because fear is something that's very, very played off of in the comic. Obviously, it is his driving element against criminals. That's what they are. They're more terrified of what he's going to do than what he actually does. So it's something that I think they've captured really, really well here. I don't think any other interpretation of Batman's done that. They've had some things, like the beginning of Batman '89, they have that. Some in Batman Begins, they have it. But if you're not counting like the Scarecrow toxin, I don't feel like that ever really got across in the Nolan movies like it does here. I just love the way they've captured that. I also feel like this is a very comic accurate Gotham. Every time we've gotten Gotham City, it either just looks like 80s New York, or it looks like modern day Chicago or something. They've never really kind of felt like Gotham. This feels dirty. This feels lived in. This feels like a dump, guys. Gotham City is not a nice place. It is bad there. And I think this really gets that across. It feels very lived in. And I think it's very tough sometimes for a movie to capture. So he's really caught the griminess, I think, of just like them early dark days of Batman in Gotham City. It tackles that theme in the comics of Batman wondering to himself, am I actually making a difference? Because he talks about crime and poverty have only went up in the 2 years that I've been doing this. That's something that's always dealt with in the comics where Batman is saying, am I helping or am I just bringing out more of the crazies because they want to challenge me, So I think it's great that you could tell Matt Reeves, he's read his comics. And if he didn't, he did a lot of research before this movie because it definitely is the most where it feels like the keys are in the hands of someone who has read the comics and isn't just here to make an action flick. This isn't an action flick. I think it's very much a detective noir kind of story and a very much solving a crime mystery kind of story. As long as you are a fan of the detective comics, I think you're going to be very, very satisfied here. I'm extremely happy as someone who's always wanted to see world's greatest detective version of Batman. And in a battle of wits against the Riddler, I could not have hoped for more. So let's talk about Pattinson. Robert Pattinson here, I was well on record as when it happened, saying it's not who I would have picked. But look, guys, I'll be honest. Every time there's a new Batman cast, I say, it's not who I would have picked. But I've always said I'll use the Ledger rule. And the Heath Ledger rule is, let's wait until we see it on screen before we flip out. Now, the Bat fandom always flips out every time there's a casting. That's just what we do, But I've really been reserved ever since I was completely proved wrong by Heath Ledger. And admit it, you guys weren't excited about it when it was announced either. And now people are like, no one else can play the Joker, So I will always be welcoming. To me, this is like James Bond. It's always exciting to see a new actor take on the role because they make it their own. It's always just a little different. And I think most cases we're usually pretty happy. I think Val Kilmer's the only one that's still pretty divisive, but Clooney. Okay, I take all that back. But yeah, it's really cool seeing a new actor in this. I think that Pattinson does very, very well as Batman. I think one of the biggest, most important things you got to have as Batman, you got to have a nice chin, a nice square jaw, and I think he looks good in the cowl. That's very important. But I like that he's using a regular voice. He's not going over the top, with his voice. He's just it's got a little bit of rasp, but nothing that's just like cartoonish. I think it's really good that he's using his real voice. He's able to emote a little better in the mask with this one than I feel like other Batmans have done. I mean, he's just a really good actor with his eyes, and I think the way the cowl is done, his eyes are very accented. I've always said I want like the white eyes like you have in the comics, but I don't know a way to do that and make it look not weird. I mean, Deadpool does it, but Deadpool's not Batman. It's a kind of a different aesthetic there. But if they're going to do it like this, I like the way they've done this. They've really it's something that they're doing here. I don't know if it's film magic or how they're doing, or just the cinematographer's a genius, which we'll talk about in a sec. But you can really see a lot of his acting that he's done in his eyes, and he's in the bat suit most of the movie. There's very little Bruce Wayne, honestly, in this. But I have no complaints over him. I think he did the action scenes really well. Obviously, if you've watched other movies besides those Twilight movies, you know that Robert Pattinson can act. He's a very good actor, and I think it's what I said when he got cast in Tenet was, if he's a good enough actor for Christopher Nolan, I think he's good enough for me. I never had a problem. I've seen some reviews saying they just can't get past that Robert Pattinson was in a Twilight movie. I don't care about that at all. Like I said in my weekly update, Michael Keaton was Mr. Mom in Beetlejuice, and we allowed that to happen, and a lot of people still consider Keaton one of the best. So it never really bothers me about people's previous roles before they do something like this. I think he's very good in this movie. It is a much darker version of Bruce than I think that we've ever really seen him, but I think it works well for what Matt Reeves is trying to do here. And I think that the Batsuit is excellent in this because I can see it getting improved in the sequels, but I like a lot of the things he's doing here. And I want to talk about the gadgets. The gadgets in this very much seem like something that Batman would be doing probably in about year 2 of doing this, where he hasn't really perfected a lot of this. He doesn't have Lucius Fox yet. His tech is there, but it's very, very the beginning stages. He's got like this really cool thing. He's got like these contacts that show some things, but he's got his grappling hook. He's got I don't want to spoil it for you, but some kind of flight suit that's really, really awesome in the movie, but it's never to a point where it feels cartoony. It feels like something that could really be a thing. And this feels very grounded in that way. And even his machines, the Batmobile and his motorcycle, you can see this is stuff that Bruce could build on his spare time, and it's very cool. Hey, let's talk about that Batmobile. I was never really on board with that Batmobile when I first saw it. I was like, I don't know how I feel about Batman just driving a sports car. It seems kind of weird. Now that I've seen it, look, guys, I love muscle cars. Like I've had a couple Dodge Challengers now. I've owned Mustangs. I've owned Camaros. I just love muscle cars. And this is like some kind of crazy Frankenstein Mad Max version of all those cars. And it is awesome. This car is just phenomenal. Like I said, something straight out of a Mad Max film. But my God, that car in this movie, the most amazing thing. Look, guys, the chase sequence in this is one of the best that I've ever seen in an action movie. It's so good. And I know a lot of people think that, they kind of spoiled all the best parts in the trailer. No, guys, you haven't seen all of this chase yet. It is the best part of the movie for me. I love this chase. It's so good. And the Batmobile is awesome in it. It is some really great stuff. And I completely eat crow on this one. I was wrong on that Batmobile. It is awesome. It's not quite up there with like the 89 Batmobile yet. I mean, I don't think anything could ever top that for me. But I think it's at least on par with the 66 Batmobile. And that's probably my second favorite Batmobile ever. But again, this seems like something you could see being like the Mark I Batmobile. It's really believable. And I think it's just done so well. And it's just such a great scene. And guys, the sound of that engine, oh my God, yeah, if you were a muscle car guy, you're going to be in heaven. Now, if you're an Andy Serkis fan, and you should be, you're going to have no problems with him as Alfred. I liked him quite a bit as Alfred. I wish he had kind of a bigger part. He's really very small role in this. I think it's a different version of Alfred than we ever got before, because he's very much not a father figure in this. He even says in this, Bruce even says, "Once you're not my father," and he even says to Bruce one time, "You needed a father growing up," and he admits that wasn't him. So I think it's a very different take on the character. I'm very, very excited to see where that goes in the future. I wonder if it's going to explore some of his roots. It does kind of mention the circus, and if you've read the comics, you know exactly what he's talking about there. But let's talk about some of the other castings here. Look, Colin Farrell is a freaking chameleon in this. If you hadn't told me, is it Farrell or Farrell? I always get that. Same with Will Ferrell. I never know which one I'm saying the right way. Anyway, he is so good as Penguin. I do not know that it is him. You talk about losing yourself in a role. This is perfect the way that this guy is portrayed on the screen. It's basically like you mix like the comic book and like the 66 Batman together, and this is what you get. He looks and sounds amazing. I cannot wait to see if they continue doing stuff with this character going forward, but he is the perfect Oswald Cobblepot. He's not quite the little gargoyle that Danny DeVito was, which is a version I liked as well, by the way. But this is very much the perfect, like Francis Ford Coppola kind of version of Oswald Cobblepot. I'm excited to see where they go forward with him. But yeah, what a performance by Colin Farrell in this, because again, he didn't tell me, I wouldn't know it was him, but it's so good. I mean, the accents, so it doesn't look like him, it doesn't sound like him, but it's him. He's really, really good in this. Has some of my favorite lines in the whole movie. When you got Carmine Falcone, now, He's a little younger, I feel like, than he usually is portrayed in the comics. I always just kind of imagine just like a Marlon Brando Godfather type. He's a little younger in this, not young, but he's a little younger in this. But I think he does a pretty good performance. I like some of the twists they have with that character. Zoe Kravitz is probably my second favorite cinematic Catwoman. I say cinematic because Julie Newmar is always going to have a place right here. Sorry, but cinematically, I only put her behind Michelle Pfeiffer. As far as Catwoman goes, I think she's really, really good in this. Not crazy about her mask, but it kind of looks like what a cat burglar would be wearing, I guess. But yeah, she's very, very good. Her chemistry with Robert Pattinson is very, very. They're lucky. They hit a home run with these two. I think they're obviously just great actors, but they really do have some good chemistry together. And I think he does a great job here portraying that repressed sexual tension between the two, where they're really into each other and you can tell they genuinely care about each other, but they understand there's reasons that they can't be together. Bruce is very much married to Gotham, and they have no problems kind of. It's something that's done in the comics very well, and I feel like Reeves captures it perfectly here, especially a scene on the rooftop later on in the movie that just feels like it's ripped straight out of the comic Hush. So it's very, very good stuff, guys. And, there's lots of nods to more comic stuff. There's Long Halloween that's kind of mentioned in here, Hush, obviously. Lots of stuff that you guys will recognize if you've read the comics at all. As for if there's a primary villain in this, it's obviously the Riddler. Paul Dano is brilliant here. Now, look, I'm not crazy about his costume. I understand Matt Reeves, his aesthetic that he uses, the look that he's going for. He's probably not going to have someone in a green question mark blazer and a bowler's cap. It's probably not going to happen in his kind of movie. But I liked what he did with the character. The costume, like I said, I don't know, it kind of felt like the Gimp from Pulp Fiction. It was weird, but his performance is just magnetic. He is just a psychotic, evil genius. And that's what Edward Nygma is. That's all the things he is in the comics. So it's very, very accurate. I love the way that he does these riddles with Batman. It's very good, this game that they're playing together. And yeah, that guy, I saw him first in Prisoner, so I knew he was going to be great. But yeah, he kills it. You don't see a lot of him in the movie, and I know some people have said that's a bad thing. To me, go back to like 7, where you don't see Kevin Spacey until like the last 20 minutes of the movie. I'm fine with that when you're doing a serial killer movie. You don't really reveal your monster too soon. But I like the way that they do social media in this movie. Look, social media is there. It's just not the driving force like a lot of superhero movies like they try to do. Really kind of focus more on like the dark web. So I'll leave it at that. But there are some things it does in here that it's almost like a snuff film and like a horror movie kind of way. Some of the stuff that Riddler does is very much like in a horror movie. So you've got the horror element with Batman, where he very much seems like a movie monster, but then you've got like the crazy psychotic jigsaw serial killer in the Riddler here. So it's a very good performance, and I can't say enough about it. It's kind of the Riddler that I've always wanted. Even if the look isn't exactly what I would have liked, I don't know how I would have done it better, is what I'm saying. That's one thing you'll learn about Matt Reeves, is he's very much in that Christopher Nolan way. This is going to be a very grounded Batman, to a point where I feel like this doesn't even feel like a superhero movie in many cases. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I do like the way that he's doing all the stuff in this movie with, as far as like realism goes. But yeah, it's still there. Like I said, the superhero stuff is still there. It just doesn't feel like we're deconstructing our superheroes anymore. And that's what I appreciate. Now, look, the action is good. The fight choreography is very well done. I still don't feel like I don't feel like this Bruce is trained with Ra's al Ghul. I don't. I feel like this guy is very much self-taught. He's a good fighter, but there's no like warehouse scene from Batman v Superman in here. There's nothing that good showing quite like his fighting level. But I do like the realism of like, this is a guy who's really going to do this. He's never going to have perfect fight choreography where he never takes a hit. He takes a lot of damage in this movie, and I mean a lot. Like, you got to wonder, how is this guy going to have a long career doing this? Because he's taking a lot of hits in this. But, for everything that he takes, he definitely deals out in spades. So, yeah, if you're looking to see Batman stomp some heads in, you're going to get it. But, yeah, you're going to see Batman take a lot of knocks as well. Now, the soundtrack, guy, holy hell, this soundtrack is amazing, which is incredible, because I thought, look, you're following up Elfman, you're following up Hans Zimmer, who followed up Danny Elfman with iconic themes. Hans Zimmer did it twice. It's going to be hard. He does it. Michael Giacchino, I always say his name wrong, so I apologize for that. I remember watching this guy come up on TV, and now that he's really kind of made the jump to feature films, it's great. Look, guys, I study music and stuff like that, so I'm always paying more attention to this than other people are. But this soundtrack is so good in a way that it builds tension. I love the way it builds tension. It just keeps getting louder and louder and louder to the point where you're almost like wanting to cover your ears. You're uncomfortable, but that's kind of what they're going for in this movie. It's so good, guys. The theme is great. I love kind of like the horror, like Hitchcock kind of strings it has whenever Riddler's around. It's really, really well done. I bought the soundtrack as soon as I got home, and I can't wait to dig into that more. Same cinematographer as Dune, so I knew this movie was going to be beautiful, and it is, guys. It has some of the best cinematography I have seen in the medium. As for some bad stuff, guys, look, the length's going to bother some people. Didn't bother me. Look, I'm a Bat fan. It could be a 5-hour Batman movie, and I'm here for it. I'm going to watch it fine. I did notice my wife look at her watch 3 times. She did say that she did like the movie, but she feels like it could have been about a half hour shorter, and I can see where she's coming from. With me, it didn't bother me so much because I feel like he's making a bigger world. But there are a lot of people, look, Catwoman, Penguin, Falcone, the Riddler. You're trying to do all of this in one movie. It can sometimes feel like, okay, this was the plot for 2 movies, and you kind of squished them together into one supercut. That's kind of what it feels like sometimes. So that might bother you a little bit if you're going to watch this in the cinema, it might bother. If you watch it at home, there's a very clear breaking point. I feel like if you want to kind of do it in 2 sittings, kind of like I did with Zack Snyder's Justice League, break that into multiple sittings. I think that might work a little better for you. But if you're fine with the long movies, guys, I don't think it'll bother you too much. And look, while I enjoy Pattinson as Batman, I'm kind of iffy on him as Bruce. Now, thankfully, he doesn't have a lot of time out of the cape and cowl in this one, which is surprising, really. But I feel like when he's outside the cape and cowl, he's no different. He still has the same look, the same attitude, the same mannerisms, the same demeanor, everything. I don't really see like a very much of a difference in him. Same voice. So that's something I feel like could maybe be worked on a little bit, because we've never seen like this damaged of a version of Bruce at this point in his career, where he clearly has not worked past everything, and he's still learning everything about his family. And I think that's a great arc that it has in this movie. But I will say I definitely liked him much more in the cape and cowl than out. Lastly, I wouldn't recommend taking your kids to this, not because of the content or anything. It's PG-13, so it's going to be safe for them or whatever. But it's a slow burn movie. They're not going to see a lot of Batman kicking faces in early. There's probably going to lose them along the way. Like, I don't think my 9-year-old will be too into this, really. I think even more so than like the Nolan films is where it's a very grown-up movie. And not because of the content, just in the storytelling. The way that the narrative is kind of stretched out is very adult. So you might not want to take the kids. It's very long, like I said. So kind of depends on your kids, But if they're really just there to see Batman, throw some batarangs, kick some people in the face, and blow stuff up with a Batmobile, this might not be it for them. But again, that just kind of depends on you. Now, why you should see it, guys? It's Batman. Look, it's always exciting to see a new Batman. Like I said, I treat this like I do anytime there's a new James Bond. You're apprehensive because you love the former one, but you're always excited to see what the new spin is going to take on it. This is definitely a version of Batman we've never seen before, and I think so far it's the most comic accurate version of him as far as classic Detective Comics Batman. I know most people want to kind of fall back to like Frank Miller Batman. I'm talking about like classic Batman, where it's very much about his detective work and his problem solving over the action. So if you want a Batman that's grounded very much in like a Nolan meets like Logan kind of way, I really feel like that's what this movie is. It very much feels like the Nolan kind of universe, but add a little bit more like realism of like the Logan movie and kind of mash those together. That's 2 awesome things, guys. So I think that if you're into those 2 things, you're going to click with this quite fine. So while it doesn't quite feel like a superhero movie, like I said, I love that we're not to the point where we're still just deconstructing our superhero movie, being like, do we actually need them? I don't feel like that at all. I think that this is really, really well done. It feels like its own thing, and that's what I love about it quite a bit. As someone who's reading like 14-book fantasy series and stuff, it's okay to have a standalone once in a while. It feels very, very good. But yeah, I love that this Bruce, he's damaged, he has a code, and he's still trying to figure this out on the fly. I love that quite a bit. Now, as for my final thoughts, guys, look, back in 2016, after Batman v Superman came out, and honestly, it missed the mark for me. I was quite disgruntled. And it's back when I started the podcast, and I said, look, if I am writing a Batman movie, here's what I want to see. I want to see Batman versus the Riddler in like a world's greatest detective kind of movie, where they're playing cat and mouse together, where they're trying a battle of wits. But I also want to be like a David Fincher's Seven kind of movie. and damn if this isn't what I got. So 5 years later, here we are. We're getting that movie that I really, really hoped for. So I've always wanted this world's greatest detective version of Batman. I'm very, very happy that I got it. And look, I think this should be the formula for Warner Brothers going forward with DC on film. Scrap the shared universe, man. Just let it go. Because, look, you're always going to be in the shadow of the MCU there. No matter if it's right or not, you're always going to be compared to that. And people are always going to say you're trying too hard. This can differentiate you. Keep doing these standalone movies. Look, you can do sequels to these, but keep them self-contained. You want to do 3 Batman movies? Do 3 Batman movies. Don't worry about what Superman or Green Lantern or Flash are doing. Then you can make your own. I mean, look, they did with Joker. It's going to be like its own thing. They're doing this Batman. It's going to be its own thing. I would love to see a Green Lantern universe like this, where it's just its own thing. It can take place completely in space. You don't even have to worry about Earth. It can be fantastic. So, yeah, I think this is the way forward for DC, and I think they're going to be very happy. Warner is, obviously, with the box office for this, because it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. Packed at my theater last night. I haven't seen it like that since, well, before the virus that shall not be named. So I'm excited for things like this, guys. I think this is a really great idea, but Warner Brothers just makes so many bonehead decisions on these things. So fingers crossed. Now, it's too early for me to really decipher, where I would rank this. I don't like to do this early. I like to let things marinate a little bit. But I say right now, gun to my head, it's my 3rd favorite Batman movie. And I've liked more Batman movies than I've disliked. So that's quite a high praise, but the arrow is definitely pointing up. And yeah, look for my spoiler talk, guys. I'm going to do a spoiler talk. It'll come out tomorrow, where I'm going to be talking with Scott, like I said, from DC Squadcast. And I can't wait. So guys, have you seen the Batman? What did you think? Drop in the comments below and let me know. And I will talk to you there.